Fast and Furious Series B Jacky family blockbuster, singular case than the franchise Fast and Furious with the 7th episode was released yesterday on the screens. Who would have thought in 2001 that the calibrated Series B only for tuning fans would not only present until now but will age over time. The route taken by the B-series Fast and Furious was paved. A first ultra-efficient episode, released in the carefree summer of 2001, before the two towers collapsing and the world tipping in a gravity era lasting permeate the American audio-visual production. Judge for yourself. $38 million budget for global recipe, $207 million. This ode to big cars and small peppies peroxidized attracted an audience far beyond its target, the circle, it must be said, of Jacky jogging, this brotherhood who listens to techno on Sunday in the parking center's commercial and TV shows including Intimate Confessions and So True, make their butter. Paul Walker, the actor that everyone discovered, the day of his death, it portrays an undercover cop in the middle of illicit Bagnall's races, who befriends a charismatic gangster played by Vin Diesel, would logically put on track a second episode, in which Paul Walker will this time only shining light at the time. The rising star Vin Diesel action cinema refuses to capitalize on its success in Remplant suites. The budget of Fast 2 Furious double, $76 million, for global recipe that is slightly greater than that of the previous installment, $236 million. The producers put in again full excavation but the recipe begins to falter, Chechen car chases, weighed down by a detective story without interest. Too Fast 2 Furious is played at the first degree and less convincing. The classic pattern of the hit saga continues until the third episode, even more expensive, $85 million budget, and much less profitable, $158 million global revenues. This time, exit the original cast. The story focuses on a Westerner who made a name in the world of drifting in Japan. It is always clandestine races, but everything is crossed with Eastern grace. Elegance and fluidity of movement are as important as the speed. This episode seems to achieving lazy spell the end of the saga, at least on the big screen. It's usually at this point that farmers continue to gnaw the bones to the marrow, leaving sweetsters hastily for the video market. But, and this is all the singularity of Fast and Furious, the fourth installment fate indeed in multiplexes 3 years later. This feat is due to Vin Diesel, who decides to re-enlist in his villain role at heart. It brings to the occasion his friend Paul Walker and bad girl Michelle Rodriguez, is the trinity of the first episode. In addition to playing Diesel door production on his broad shoulders, allowing to complete a similar budget in the third episode, this time, the formula changes. Cars are relegated to the background and the plot thickens. You can feel the will to move towards a more mature show. This is certainly the episode as out of step with what we are entitled to expect a stamped movie. Fast and Furious, since hardly flatters the instincts of the public redneck referred to in the first 3 episodes, and lacks the spectacular action and self-deprecating to be the signature of the 3 that follow, a transition episode. Therefore, the catchphrase summarizes the concept, new model, original parts. However, it is fun to take the criticism was that Le Monde at the time, the same newspaper that devotes 2 full pages to today's sequel of the license. The result is a movie franchise of action that the idiocy and ugliness has drew mark of election, despite the idiocy and ugliness that sees the daily reference the public largely follows since the film round up $363 million at the global box office, thus reboosted by the energy of a Vin Diesel who broke like never before. The series can start on a new basis. With a comfortable $125 million budget and a cast containing the previous episode's headliners adding the mastodon Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, the franchise finally spreading its wings. The new formula is between turning the film Ocean's 11, pure blockbuster action including the spectacular never afraid to flirt with ridicule, all without ever making fun of the popular audience that Vin Diesel is confident to delight. The generosity of this transpires as a pinata-stuffed entertainment begins to attract criticism favors. The public, meanwhile, shows its gratitude with global revenues almost doubled compared to the previous episode. Masses said, Fast and Furious is now moving into the big leagues. The 6th episode confirms this trend with a cast and an identical formula, a tad less humor and a record budget of $160 million, which yields a bit more than the fifth installment in the world. The contract is completed. The seventh Fast and Furious should have quietly pursued that path. It was not counting the death of Paul Walker in the middle of shooting the film, ironically died in a car accident. The world to discover the name of this actor, Lamond beats audience records on his website with his Necro and Van Diesel, is devastated by the death of a member of this family that exists beyond the screen, and allows Fast and Furious Last to benefit from this extra soul which found its way to the heart of the audience. This raises the fateful question, should continue or stop? This nag tender-heart Diesel decides not to capitulate to death and with the blessing of the family to Paul Walker, undertook to finish the film in order to make. Finally, the chosen method will be a mix of images, syntheses of footage from previous films and liners played by brothers Paul Walker, enabling the actor to terminate Fast and Furious 7 despite his disappearance. As a worthy episode of the series, the show promises waterfalls to the limits of cartoony, and benefits in addition to attendant Kurt Russell, New York 1997, Jason Statham, The Transporter, and Tony Jaa. On back, Stallone and his Expendables can get dressed. Whether there will be an 8th episode, Van Diesel has already confirmed that yes, and he would be shot in New York.